Tonight's class will include the following topics: halfway houses and case managers, working towards early release, and efforts towards community-based college education. I hope you enjoyed the class this evening.
One of the most touching and important things in my life was during the almost 11 years that I was in federal incarceration, were the visits by rabbis throughout the country to the prisons that I was at. I became very close to many of these rabbis. Those times were very, very important to me personally, getting through that time. Excuse me if I get emotional at times, but those times were very, very important for me. One of the things we learned during our Torah teachings during those years was the importance of repentance and the importance of continuing to have hope for a better tomorrow. Those are really intertwined concepts. And I know that for many of you, and for me, I experience this very much myself, that when I left prison, hope was kind of an elusive concept. It certainly was when I was going into prison with almost 14 years of time to do. I learned to have hope largely through the support of the rabbis who would come and visit with us and share with us their teachings of the Torah and putting those teachings into real world terms. And with that, I was able to build upon what they were teaching us and to continue to have hope during all those years in prison. And I'm very thrilled, as I know Nick is today, to be a part of this program and to be able to be of assistance to each of you in your continuing journey of hope and for a better tomorrow. So with that, let me give you, please provide you with a brief description of who I am. I was a practicing attorney for approximately 10 years before getting involved in a business that ultimately sent me to federal prison. I was convicted of wire and mail fraud in 2008. There is a video of my years in prison and the preceding years that led to that, a YouTube video that we've attached to the course. You can get a better feeling for the way I spent my time, which was to assist inmates in prison pretty much 24/7 during those years. That assisted me both emotionally and intellectually getting through my time. Like I say, Nick and I are here to be helpful to you, and we look forward to a lasting relationship with each of you to the extent that you're looking forward to the same with us so we could be helpful to you. So with that, let me begin with the first topic, and that topic is the probation and parole officer issue that is set forth in your class syllabus. As we all have experienced, whether we were in federal or state prison, we had case managers and counselors generally in prison who monitor our activities and on a fairly regular basis reviewed our progress with progress reports, particularly in the federal system. Once we are released, and we'll be discussing in a moment, halfway house time that is spent and how that is similar in some ways to the individuals we are going to be encountering in probation and parole. The probation officer's duty is to observe our activities and to make sure that we're staying on the straight and narrow, that we're continuing to be law-abiding citizens. There are many different types of personalities we'll be encountering. I, for one, have had 4 different changes in probation officers in a 1.5-year period thus far. That's something we have to be open-minded and be willing to adjust to, because as we experienced in prison, the probation officer, I guess you could say personality skill set could differ from person to person pretty widely. My best advice to you on the probation side is to comply to the letter to the extent that you can. I can tell you in my particular case, I'm going to be applying for early release from my supervised release term, which in the federal system at least is fairly routinely being observed to be a 1.5 years into your supervised release term. So I have a 3-year supervised release term, for instance. The public defender is going to be filing a motion for me in 1 month because on April 11th, I'm 180 days into that. So my recommendation to all of you is to do your best to get to that point. Statutorily, from a federal perspective, you can actually bring the motion after 1 year, but I would recommend that you wait the 18 months because most judges, at least in the federal system, are making you wait that long, are basically saying to many defendants who are, I should say individuals, who come into court sooner than that, that they should wait 180 days. That's what I'm doing, and that's my recommendation. Obviously, it behooves us to get off as quickly as possible, because then the court and the judge and the U.S. attorney no longer has criminal jurisdiction over our activities vis-a-vis the case that brought us, into the federal prison system. With respect to the halfway house, and I'm going to defer to Nick more speaking on parole, because that's more of a state court matter, state case issue. With respect to the halfway house, I was in a halfway house for 6 months personally. I can tell you again that the halfway house case managers, as they were called in my particular one in the Chicago area, could be very difficult. The idea here is that, and I think the concern of many of these halfway house case managers is that once we are released from federal prison, the idea they believe in our minds is that we're free now, and we're free to possibly go back to living our criminal ways. And so they're really watching very, very carefully. And as we've learned in prison, where these case managers are basically taught to say no far more than yes, I found the same to be true with respect to the halfway house. So once again, our goal is to get out of that halfway house as quickly as possible with the best, I guess you could say, record while we're there of good behavior. So again, I think it's important to do your best to get along with the halfway house case manager and the individuals who are working in the halfway house, and to do your best really to abide by the rules, and to get through that period as cleanly and as quickly as you can. Nick, I'll turn it over to you now for your comments on that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. With halfway houses and with probation and parole, it's like Purim. It's a roll of the dice, right? It's you never know what you're going to get until you're there. You might get a great parole officer, and you might get a great halfway house, and you might not. I happened to get a good parole officer and a terrible halfway house. And the problem is, if somebody is running your halfway house, they have a lot of influence and authority over what's going to happen to you. It's literally one phone call, and you could be going back to prison. Nobody wants that. So as diplomatic as I can make this, I would say know when to split staff. If you have, somebody who's working with you, then work with them, obviously. And if somebody's working against you, obviously, you got to take this time and be submissive and say, okay, I get it. You're the authority. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. But in my case, the halfway house manager decided, oh, I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to call the parole officer. But I'd been doing everything that I needed to do for my parole officer. I'd enrolled in college. I didn't started volunteering with an agency. I was going to see the rabbi. I was doing everything that I needed to do. I recorded it all. So when it came down to actually pleading a case and saying, you need to make an exception, I had something on paper. I had something actually to present to somebody. If you don't do that, and you just kind of show up with your hat in your hand, empty-handed, you're just not in a terribly good position, especially as a returning citizen, to kind of stay out, or, to keep your freedom, I guess. That is one thing. I would also say that if you do look at the syllabus here, a lot of these things that we're talking about, the importance of reaching out to community colleges, contacting the Secretary of State, reaching outreach agencies. And I don't care who it is. It's wherever you happen to be living at the time. Guarantee you, a couple blocks of a walk, and you can find somebody or some agency that can use your assistance, and you can find somebody that can, give you a good letter of recommendation. These things all tie in with number one. They all tie in with probation and parole, because they all look extremely, extremely good. I don't know how many of you guys are from Illinois, and or how many have federal cases, but I would also suggest that regardless of what state you're in, ask your probation and parole officer, again, in a diplomatic way, when I do everything, not if, but when I do everything that's expected of me, and then some, and I pursue avenues that are going to advance my career or my education or anything. And I mean, believe me, I know a lot of you guys probably don't need to advance your education, but in this situation, do it. Go to your community college, take a night class. It looks extremely good, and it gives your probation or parole officer a reason to suggest to the board to, as David's looking, release you early. If you don't have anything on paper, if you don't have anything to give them, they really don't have a reason to make that suggestion. So I think this entire class, in a nutshell, is going to be about navigating probation and parole, and how you can actually get through it and actually shorten the duration that you would actually have to report to somebody.
And I would like to add to what Nick said. Very well said, Nick. With respect to the community college issue, one of the things I'd like to say is that for many who find it very difficult, which is not uncommon, to be employed right out of prison and going into the halfway house, going the community college route or going the educational route will allow you to get out of the halfway house. That's another important issue, I think, mentally for all of us. We don't want to be bogged down and sitting in this halfway house day after day. I know of many halfway house individuals who opted to pursue educational opportunities in lieu of pursuit of a job for a variety of reasons, age, interest, etc., or as a stepping stone in their mind to becoming ably employed. So I would make that recommendation. They have, as I understand it, come back with the Pell Grants for convicts, for those who are leaving prisons. And I think that many of the prisons were making that available by way of a memorandum as I was leaving prison. So I think by now that is the case. That was the case many years ago. Then they actually ended that. And I think they've reinstituted it. So there is money available for those who are leaving prison for educational opportunities. And I think it just makes a lot of sense for many, if for no other reason, to be able to adjust and reintegrate in a more healthy way by not being holed up in that halfway house for 6 months or more. And many are for a longer period than I was, which, believe me, 6 months felt like a year at least to me anyway.
We today focused on the best way to navigate parole, probation, and case managers. Make certain that you record all of your activities and all of your efforts carefully. For when you meet with probation, you meet with your case managers at the halfway house, that'll be critical in setting a good impression and in getting through this period as painlessly and stress-free as possible. We hope you enjoyed this evening's class.